The whispers scattered like tumbleweeds across the dusty street of Redemption Springs, as Mary Blackburn clutched her infant daughter closer to her chest, her worn shawl doing little to shield either of them from the scornful glares of the townsfolk gathered outside the general store. It was the summer of 1878, and the unforgiving Arizona Territory sun beat down as mercilessly as the judgment raining upon her from every direction. "Shameful display," muttered Mrs. Peterson, the banker's wife, loud enough for everyone to hear, coming into decent society with her bastard child. Mary's cheeks burned, but she kept her chin high despite the tears threatening to spill. 6 months ago, she'd arrived in town with nothing but the clothes on her back and the child growing inside her. Now, with her daughter Emily just 2 months old, Mary had managed to secure work as a laundress for the hotel, but the wages barely kept them fed. "That's the type that brings down a good town," someone else called out. Mary tried to hurry past, her heart hammering against her ribs. Emily began to fuss, sensing her mother's distress. "Hush now, little one," she whispered, bouncing the baby gently. "It'll be all right." But the crowd seemed determined to make an example of her today. Several men stepped forward, blocking her path to the boarding house where she rented a small room. "Maybe you ought to take your business elsewhere," said Tom Wilson, the saloon owner. "Redemption Springs has standards." Mary fought back tears. "Please, I just need to get my baby home." "Your kind ain't welcome here no more," another voice called. The baby's cries grew louder, and Mary felt panic rising in her throat. She had nowhere else to go, no family to turn to. Her parents had disowned her when they discovered her condition, and the man who'd promised her marriage had disappeared the moment she told him about the baby. Just as the situation seemed about to turn even uglier, the crowd parted. A tall figure on horseback approached, the sound of hoofbeats silencing the murmurs. Mary recognized him immediately. Adam Lawson, one of the most respected ranchers in the territory. His broad shoulders were set straight, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his hat. Adam dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the dirt. At 32, he was known as a fair man who kept to himself, running the Silver Creek Ranch with quiet efficiency since inheriting it from his father 5 years earlier. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying authority that made even Tom Wilson shift uncomfortably. "Just taking care of unwanted elements," Wilson replied, gesturing toward Mary. "This woman and her situation don't represent the values of our growing town." Adam stepped forward, placing himself between Mary and the crowd. He looked at her tear-stained face, then at the tiny bundle in her arms. Without hesitation, he turned back to face the townspeople. "They're mine now," he said, his voice steady and firm. "The woman and the child, they're under my protection." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Mary herself couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You claiming that baby's yours, Lawson?" Sheriff Holt asked, pushing his way forward. Adam didn't flinch. "I'm claiming responsibility for them both. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." His hand rested casually near the holster at his hip, though he made no move to draw his weapon. The sheriff studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right then. Folks, show's over. Get on back to your business." The crowd began to disperse, though the whispers continued. Adam turned to Mary, speaking quietly. "Madam, I'd like to offer you and your child safe passage to my ranch. No strings attached, just a place where you won't be harassed." Mary clutched Emily closer. "Why would you do this? You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied. "I know what it's like to face this town's judgment, and I know no child deserves to suffer for it." He glanced at the baby. "What's her name?" "Emily," Mary answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "A beautiful name." Adam offered a small smile. "My foreman's wife, Sarah, just had twins. She could use help around the house and there'd be a proper room for you both. Decent pay, too." Mary hesitated, searching his face for any sign of deception. All she found was kindness in his green eyes. "Why should I trust you?" she asked. "You shouldn't, not right away," he answered honestly. "But I promise you'll be treated with respect at Silver Creek. And if you're not satisfied with the arrangement, I'll bring you back to town or wherever else you want to go." Mary looked around at the hostile faces still watching from doorways and windows. She had few options and none as promising as this unexpected offer. "All right, Mr. Lawson, we'll come." Adam nodded, then helped Mary up onto his horse before mounting behind her. As they rode out of town, Mary could feel the warmth of his chest against her back, solid and reassuring. Emily had quieted, seemingly content in the gentle rhythm of the horse's gait. "Thank you," she whispered, not turning around. "No need for thanks," Adam replied. "We've all got our burdens to bear. Sometimes they're just easier when shared." The Silver Creek Ranch sprawled across 2,000 acres of rolling grassland, nestled against the foothills of mountains that shimmered purple in the distance. The main house was larger than Mary had expected, a two-story structure of solid timber with a wide porch wrapping around three sides. As they approached, a woman stepped out, wiping her hands on her apron. She was in her 40s with silver-streaked dark hair and a kind, weathered face. "Adam Lawson, you're late for supper again," she called out before noticing Mary and the baby. Her expression shifted to surprise, then curiosity. "Mrs. Garcia," Adam said as he helped Mary down, "this is Mary Blackburn and her daughter Emily. They'll be staying with us. Mary, this is Elena Garcia, our housekeeper and the best cook in the territory." Elena's eyes softened as she looked at the baby. "Welcome to Silver Creek, Miss Blackburn. Come inside before this little one catches a chill." The interior of the house was simple but comfortable, with polished wooden floors and sturdy furniture. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, and the smell of fresh bread and stew filled the air. "I'll show you to your room," Elena said, leading Mary up the staircase. "You can rest and freshen up before supper." The bedroom was small but clean, with a large window overlooking the ranch yard. A cradle had already been placed beside the bed. "That was for Sarah's twins, but they're keeping both in their room for now," Elena explained. "I'll bring up some hot water for washing." When Elena left, Mary sat on the edge of the bed, still stunned by the day's events. Emily gurgled softly in her arms, her tiny fingers wrapped around Mary's thumb. "What have we gotten ourselves into, little one?" she whispered. The next morning, Mary awoke to sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment, she was disoriented, then remembered where she was. Emily was still sleeping peacefully in the cradle. A soft knock came at the door, and Elena entered with a tray of breakfast. "Mr. Lawson thought you might like to eat up here this morning," she said. "Sarah is eager to meet you when you're ready. Her cabin is just behind the main house." After breakfast, Mary dressed in her cleanest dress and wrapped Emily in a fresh blanket. Outside, the ranch was already bustling with activity. Cowboys moved between the barn and the corrals, horses nickered, and the clang of a hammer rang out from the blacksmith shed. Mary made her way to the small cabin where Sarah, the foreman's wife, lived. She was greeted by a young woman with auburn hair and tired eyes, who welcomed her warmly while balancing a baby on each hip. "You must be Mary," Sarah said. "I can't tell you how grateful I am for the help. These two are running me ragged." The twins, both boys, were just 3 months old. Sarah showed Mary around the cabin and explained what needed to be done: laundry, cooking, cleaning, and helping with the babies when Sarah needed rest. "Mr. Lawson said you've got experience as a laundress." Sarah asked. "Yes, at the hotel in town," Mary replied. "Well, ranch laundry is a sight worse, I'm afraid. Cowboys don't know the meaning of clean," Sarah smiled. "But the pay is better, and no one here will look down on you for having a child of your own." Over the next few weeks, Mary settled into life at Silver Creek. The work was hard, but far more pleasant than what she'd endured in town. The ranch hands were respectful, if sometimes awkward, around her, and Elena became something of a mother figure, teaching Mary to cook proper Mexican dishes and fussing over Emily like a grandmother. Adam Lawson remained something of a mystery. He was often out from dawn until dusk, managing the ranch's operations, but he always asked after Mary and Emily's welfare at supper. Sometimes, Mary would catch him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. One evening, about a month after her arrival, Mary was hanging laundry on the line behind the main house when Adam approached, leading his horse. "Evening, Miss Blackburn," he said, removing his hat. "How are you settling in?" "Very well, thank you, Mr. Lawson," she replied. "Everyone has been kind. Adam nodded, seemingly pleased. And Emily, she's doing well, growing stronger every day. Mary smiled. She's with Alina, who insists on spoiling her. A comfortable silence fell between them. Adam ran a hand through his dark hair, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. I've been meaning to ask, he finally said. The story you told in town about Emily's father abandoning you, is that true? Mary stiffened. Yes, it's true. Why would I lie about such a thing? I didn't mean to suggest you were lying, Adam quickly clarified. It's just, there are rumors in town. Some say you were married and your husband died. Others say worse things. And which do you believe? Mary asked, lifting her chin. Adam met her gaze directly. I believe a woman raising a child alone deserves respect, not condemnation. The rest isn't my business unless you choose to make it so. His answer surprised her. Most men she'd known would have demanded the full story, claiming a right to know. His name was James, she found herself saying. He was passing through my hometown in Missouri, working on the railroad. He talked about California and the fortune he'd make there, said he'd send for me once he was established. She shook her head. I was naive enough to believe him. By the time I realized I was with child, he was long gone. Adam's expression darkened. Some men don't deserve the title. My parents threw me out, Mary continued, the words coming easier now. Said I'd brought shame on the family. I had an aunt in Tucson who I thought might take me in, but when I arrived, I learned she'd passed the winter before. I had nowhere else to go, so I stayed in Redemption Springs, taking whatever work I could find. Adam was quiet for a moment. You're a brave woman, Mary Blackburn. Not brave, she said, just desperate. Survival takes courage, he replied, especially when you're fighting for two. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: the upcoming cattle drive, the harvest from the kitchen garden, a foal born the previous week. Mary found herself laughing at Adam's dry observations about the new schoolteacher in town who wore city clothes, utterly unsuited to ranch visits. As the sun began to set, Adam excused himself to tend to his horse, but not before asking if Mary and Emily would join him for a ride to the north pasture on Sunday after church. I'd like that, Mary said, surprised by her own eagerness. Sunday came, and after returning from the small church in town, Mary dressed Emily in her best gown and wrapped her snugly in a blanket. Adam was waiting by the barn with a wagon rather than horses. Thought this might be more comfortable for the little one, he explained. The north pasture was beautiful, with wildflowers dotting the grassland and a creek running clear and cool through the property. Adam spread a blanket beneath a cottonwood tree, and they ate the lunch Alina had packed: fried chicken, biscuits, and apple pie. My father bought this land when I was just a boy, Adam said, gazing out over the landscape. He had a vision of what it could become. I like to think he'd be proud of what we've built here. I'm sure he would be, Mary replied. It's a beautiful place. Adam looked at her thoughtfully. It can be lonely, though, Mary nodded, understanding, even surrounded by people. Exactly. He smiled, and Mary noticed how it transformed his face, softening the lines around his eyes. Emily began to fuss, and Mary lifted her to her shoulder, patting her back gently. May I? Adam asked, extending his arms. Hesitantly, Mary handed her daughter over. Adam cradled Emily with surprising skill, talking to her softly as he showed her a bright red wildflower. You're good with her, Mary observed. My sister has 4 children, he explained. I've had some practice. He tickled Emily's chin, earning a gurgling laugh. She has your eyes. Mary smiled, watching them together. Something warm unfurled in her chest, a feeling she'd almost forgotten existed. As the weeks turned into months, Mary found herself looking forward to these Sunday outings with Adam. They explored different parts of the ranch, sometimes fishing in the creek or picking berries in the wild patches that grew along the southern fence line. Adam would often bring a book and read aloud while Mary sewed or played with Emily on the blanket. By the time autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds, Mary realized with some alarm that she had developed feelings for her employer. She tried to dismiss them as mere gratitude, but knew it was more than that. She enjoyed his company, respected his quiet strength, and found herself watching for him whenever she was working around the main house. The feeling seemed mutual. Adam sought her out more frequently, bringing little gifts: a ribbon for Emily's hair, a book of poetry he thought Mary might enjoy, wildflowers gathered during his rides. The ranch hands exchanged knowing glances, and Alina took to humming romantic ballads whenever they were together. One crisp October evening, Adam invited Mary to join him on the porch after Emily was asleep. Alina had offered to listen for the baby, her eyes twinkling with barely concealed delight. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Adam seemed unusually nervous, turning his hat in his hands. "Mary," he finally said, "I've been thinking a lot about the future, about the ranch, about Emily, about you." Mary's heart quickened. "Oh, when I brought you here, I had no intentions beyond offering safety," he continued. "But these past months, I've come to care for you both very deeply." He took a deep breath. "I find myself hoping you might consider making this arrangement permanent." Mary stared at him, scarcely daring to believe what she was hearing. "Adam, are you proposing?" He nodded, his expression serious. "I am. I want to give Emily my name to raise her as my own, and I want you by my side, not as my employee, but as my wife." He reached for her hand. "I know it might seem sudden, but I believe we could build a good life together." Tears filled Mary's eyes. "But what about the town, the rumors? I don't want to bring shame to you." "Let them talk," Adam said firmly. "I've never much cared for their opinions anyway. What matters is what we build here together." Mary thought about the past months, the kindness Adam had shown her, the way he treated Emily as if she were his own blood, the respect he'd given Mary when others had only offered scorn. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Adam's face broke into a radiant smile. He leaned forward, kissing her gently, his hand cupping her cheek as if she were made of precious glass. They were married 2 weeks later in the same church where they'd attended Sunday services. Many townspeople came, some out of genuine goodwill, others from curiosity. Mary wore a dress of pale blue silk that Alina and Sarah had helped her make, and Emily, now nearly 9 months old, was dressed in white, happily babbling in Alina's arms during the ceremony. Sheriff Holt stood as Adam's best man, his presence a clear statement to the town that this union had his blessing. After the ceremony, he approached Mary with a somewhat sheepish expression. "Mrs. Lawson," he said, tipping his hat. "I believe I owe you an apology for how things went in town that day. Not all of us were proud of it." Mary smiled, finding forgiveness easier than she'd expected. "Thank you, Sheriff. That means a great deal." The wedding celebration continued at the ranch, with a feast prepared by Alina and music provided by some of the ranch hands who played fiddle and guitar. As twilight fell, lanterns were lit around the yard, and Adam led Mary in a dance while their guests clapped in rhythm. "Happy?" he asked, his arms secure around her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied truthfully. Later that night, after the guests had departed and Emily was sleeping soundly in the nursery that had once been a spare bedroom, Mary stood by the window of what was now their shared bedroom. Adam came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. "How different my life is from what I imagined a year ago," she said. "I was so lost, so afraid. And now—" Mary turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had changed everything with a few simple words in a dusty street. "Now I'm found." Their life together unfolded with the changing seasons. The winter brought heavy snow that blanketed the ranch, turning it into a wonderland that delighted Emily as she took her first tentative steps across the kitchen floor. Spring brought new calves, fresh growth, and the news that Mary was expecting. The town's attitude gradually shifted. Mary's dignity and Adam's unwavering support eventually won over even the most judgmental. Mrs. Peterson, who had been among the loudest critics, sheepishly approached Mary after church one Sunday to admire Emily and offer belated congratulations on her marriage. "Your husband is a good man," she said. "Not many would have done what he did." Mary agreed, though she knew now that Adam's actions that day had been perfectly in character. He had always been a man who stood against injustice, who followed his own moral compass regardless of public opinion. Their son was born the following autumn, a healthy boy they named William after Adam's father. Emily, now almost 2, was fascinated by her baby brother, constantly wanting to help care for him. She's a natural big sister, Adam observed proudly one evening as they watched Emily carefully placing her favorite doll beside William in his cradle. She has a good example in her father, Mary replied, leaning against his shoulder. Adam looked at her with the same intensity he had shown on the day they met. I never thought I'd have this, he admitted. A family of my own. I'd resigned myself to a solitary life. So had I, Mary said. After everything that happened, I couldn't imagine anyone would want me and Emily. Then we were both wrong, Adam said, pulling her closer. Wonderfully wrong. 5 years passed, bringing another daughter they named Grace and transforming Silver Creek Ranch into the most prosperous operation in the territory. The house expanded to accommodate their growing family, and Mary started a small school for the ranch children and those from neighboring properties. On the 5th anniversary of the day they met, Adam took Mary back to the North Pasture, now their special place. Emily, William, and Grace were spending the day with Alina, who had declared it a baking day much to the children's delight. They sat beneath the same cottonwood tree, now larger and providing more shade. Adam handed Mary a small wrapped package. "What's this?" she asked, smiling. "Open it and see." Inside was a locket of fine gold. When Mary opened it, she found a tiny photograph of their 3 children on one side and on the other an inscription, "They're mine now and forever." Tears welled in Mary's eyes as she recognized the echo of the words that had changed her life. "I had it made in Denver," Adam explained. "Do you like it?" "It's perfect," she whispered, reaching up to kiss him. Adam held her close, his voice growing serious. "That day in town, I acted on instinct. I saw you standing there with your head held high despite everything, and I knew you were someone special." "You saved us," Mary said. Adam shook his head. "No, you were already saving yourself. I just offered a hand." Mary leaned against him, watching the sun begin its descent toward the mountains. "Do you ever regret it? Taking responsibility for another man's child? Emily has been mine from the moment I first held her," Adam said firmly. "Blood couldn't make her more my daughter." As if to prove his point, he told Mary about his plans to formally adopt Emily, to legally give her his name as he had done in practice since their marriage. "I want there to be no question, ever, that she is a Lawson," he said. Mary felt a wave of love so powerful it nearly overwhelmed her. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," she said. Adam smiled, tracing her cheek with his fingertips. "You stood strong when it would have been easier to break. You loved your child fiercely when others would have hidden her away. You trusted me when you had every reason not to trust anyone." He kissed her softly. "If anyone doesn't deserve someone, it's me not deserving you." As they rode back to the ranch in the fading light, Mary thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain and fear that had once defined her life had transformed into something beautiful and unexpected. The whispers that had once cut like knives had been replaced by the laughter of her children and the love of a good man. The lights of Silver Creek Ranch appeared in the distance, warm and welcoming. Emily was on the porch, waiting for them, her dark hair flying behind her as she ran to meet their wagon. "Papa, Mama," she called, her smile radiant. "Come see what we baked." Adam swung down from the wagon and lifted her high, spinning her around as she giggled. "Is that so, Miss Emily, and did you save any for us?" "Of course," she said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I saved the biggest piece just for you." Mary watched them, her heart full. From the house came the sound of William's laughter and baby Grace's happy babbling. Alina appeared in the doorway, waving to them. This was home. This was family. This was love that had begun with an act of courage and kindness on a dusty street in Redemption Springs. Adam helped Mary down from the wagon, his hand lingering on hers. "Ready?" he asked as Emily danced ahead of them toward the house. "For anything," Mary replied, "as long as we're together." And together they walked toward the light, their shadows merging into one as the first stars appeared in the evening sky.